Hey guys, in today's video we're gonna see how to use API platform to expose an API in our Symfony project, and we're also gonna see how to create custom endpoints using the EonX-EasyCore package. So to start, we're just gonna require the API package or pack provided by Symfony. So once the dependencies are installed, just make sure that the API platform bundle is installed as well and registered. And let's have a look at the API platform configuration. So something that I like to do is to reformat the YAML that has been generated to have arrays on multiple lines, just to have a clearer picture of the configuration. That's a personal taste. I also like to put my API resources in a specific namespace, so I'm gonna create API resource namespace, and to allow or to tell API platform to find my resources in that folder, we're just gonna update the mapping path in the configuration. So just add on a path the kernel project D and the SRC API resource folder. So now that API platform can find our resource, let's just create a resource, and in our use case we're just gonna create a resource to log a message using the logger. So we simply gonna expose an API that allows us to post a message to an endpoint, and this message is gonna get logged in the application. So sorry about that, let's just wait for my PHP storm to finish indexing. Shouldn't take too long. Up, there it is. So we've created our resource, we've created our message. Let's generate the getters and setters, and if everything is going as expected, we should be able to just register that class as an API resource just using the annotation. Let's start the web server and let's check the API documentation. So just go to /API, and there it is. We have a Swagger documentation of our API. So as you can see, the full CRUD has been generated. That's not what we want. We want a simple endpoint. So let's just get only or configure only the post endpoint for the collections and remove all the rest. So that's it. We have our endpoint, we have our message, so we're ready to go. We can just use API platform to send that request. So let's try it out. So the message, my message to log, and let's execute. And that obviously didn't work. No item route associated with the type and our resource. Okay, so that's because by default API platform expects us to have a get endpoint, so it can use it to generate the ID for that resource. So let's add that endpoint and let's try again. Hopefully it should, oh no, it still doesn't work. So what's happening now? No identifiers defined for the resource. Okay, so we have the get endpoint, but there is no identifier on our resource. So if you look through the API platform documentation, you're gonna see that you can achieve that really easily just by adding a property. This property, we're gonna call that ID, and we're gonna add the API property annotation on it with the identifier set to true, set the getters and setters, and let's go back to the documentation. So let's go back to the API. Oops, sorry about that. So do not go to Google for localhost API. Let's just go back to our local API. Yes. So now we have the get endpoint and we have the ID. So let's just set the ID to my-id and let's just set the message. All right. And oh, yes, this one worked. We received a successful response, but obviously no logs because we didn't do that yet. So let's implement the logging logic. So to do that, we're gonna use a data persister of API platform. So just create a data persister folder under API and create a log message data persister. This data persister needs to implement the data persister interface from API platform. Just implement the methods. So the support, we just need to check that the data is an instance of our resource. We are not going to use the remove function. And now let's implement the persist method. So because the support method is checking only for log message resource, we can assume that the data we're going to receive in persist is going to be an instance of log message resource. So let's just change the PHP doc block so we know what we're talking about. And now we just simply return the data. So we want to log the message, so let's just add the dependency on the logger. So use the PSL logger interface and just inject that through your constructor. Normal dependency injection. I'm not teaching anything to anyone here. And once we have the logger, let's just create a message using the message from the data. So to make it easier to see in those logs, let's just surround that message with some symbols so it's easier to see, and let's use the data get message and let's log that message in the application. So that's it. We have our data persister, we're creating the message, we're logging the message, and we return the resource again. Let's try it out. We've sent a request, it was successful, and we have our log in the logs. So that's it. We have a custom endpoint working with API platform. But if we look at this documentation, we still have this get endpoint that we're not using, and we have this ID that is generated using that ID property, but we don't use it either. So let's have a look at this package EasyCore and the API platform API resource hierarchy. So just start by installing this package and let's see what this package can do for us. Once you've installed the package, at the time of recording that video, you still have to register that bundle yourself. And once again, my PHP Storm is indexing. It shouldn't take too long. Up, there it is. So register the EonX bundle for all the environments. Done. So now that we have the EasyCore bundle installed, let's just clean up our resource. Let's keep only what we need. Do we need the ID? No, we're not using it. So we remove the setters and getters. We remove the property. Do we need this item operation? No, we don't either. So let's just remove everything and let's just keep our message. So let's go back to your documentation. Let's start the web server first. Go back to the documentation and back to our starting point. We have only a post endpoint with our message. This is all we need. Let's try. Oh, wait. You're gonna tell me, yeah, but it wasn't working at the start. So what to do? Implement the no IRI item interface on your resource. Is that simple? Let's see. My message with no get endpoint. Let's try out, and yes, it works. Let's have a look at the logs just to make sure, and yes, it works. So just by implementing the no IRI item interface on our resource, we have a successful response, and as you can see, we have a special ID which is IRI not supported. And this is it. You have a resource containing only what you need with no extra information or logic. Now, let's have a look at the data persister. We have this remove method that we never use, and the support logic is always checking if it's an instance of. So the EasyCore package comes with an abstract simple data persister. So let's just use it. And as you can see, now we have only two methods to implement. The persist one, so let's just copy paste the logic from the previous one, and a get API resource class. So let's just return our resource class, and there it is. There is no remove methods to implement anymore, and there is no supports. The abstract class is taking care of that, and so we can concentrate on only what we want. Let's try again. So let's change the message. My message with no get endpoint and the simple data persistent. Let's try that again, and it works. So we have the log message, and as a bonus, if you go to the profiler, we didn't lose any debug information, so you can still go to the API platform and see the data persistent that run. Now, okay, it's good, we have a custom endpoint and we don't need a get endpoint to make it work, but what happens if we need a custom ID? Just implement the self-provided IRI item interface. You just have to define the get IRI method. You just return the string of your choice, and let's try it again. Go back to the documentation, and this message is getting a bit long, so just my message with custom IRI, try it again and check the response. Now the ID is your custom string. This is it, you all sorted. You now implemented a custom endpoint using API platform, and you still have all the functionality of the Swagger documentation.